Americans love scenery. We want to see it all, from one coast to the next, Mount Rushmore down to the Everglades. So hop into a Chevy Malibu and take the scenic route. It's the car you knew America could build. There's a place where people count on friendships they can trace back generations, where they can count on the same stool at the coffee shop waiting for them every morning. This place is called Glen Ellen, and you can find it in every bottle of Glen Ellen wine. This is craft brewed Herman Joseph's, the smoothest, easiest drinking specialty beer in the entire solar system. And I believe you'll find drinkable in the dictionary right after don't order a beer you can't drink. Zoingo! Boingo! The freestyle pogo with more boing, more bounce. Bounce further, bounce higher with Zoingo Boingo. To see what makes Arrowhead Mountain Spring water different from those other waters, you have to go back to the source. And with Arrowhead, that means going back a little farther and longer than most. Between security challenged and security strengthened, there's one important word: how. And it is the how that makes all the difference to our nation and our world. Lockheed Martin. We never forget who we're working for. What makes Kraft Singles so good? 2 out of every 3 kids don't get the recommended amount of calcium. But with Kraft Singles, they get a good source of calcium and the taste they love. Kraft Singles. Magic every single time. Throw boring overboard with a new real meal from Long John Silver's. A meal worthy of a plate, just $4.99. Only at Long John Silver's. We may not all be geniuses, but we can all do something smart. Introducing the Hyundai 199 Sonata Lease. It's a smart deal on a really smart car.
I'll eat a salad, especially a Pittsburgh salad with steak and fries on top. But I need green lettuce. I don't want purple lettuce. I don't want lettuce the color of the varicose veins on the back of the old ladies at the pool.
Good morning. It's Friday, Fireman Friday, April the 11th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have headlines, motivation, Bishop Barron, Ayn Rand, and 3,000 degrees. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. And now, the only headline today that's really worth talking about is the Menendez brothers resentencing case heads to court. A hearing will be held Friday on the Los Angeles County District Attorney's motion to withdraw the Menendez brothers resentencing petition. There's been their relatives, the Menendez brothers' relatives, have been on television, talking about these two and trying to encourage. What they're trying to do is gin up public opinion, because the whole idea here is that reality is whatever the majority says it is. That's what these people think. And so they figure if they can gin up enough public opinion on their side that they can shape reality. And it's just not true. They're not in prison as a matter of public opinion. They're in prison as a matter of law. Don't be fooled. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, in the political corner, Marine Le Pen.
J'en appelle à la sagesse et au bon sens des Français. Qu'on me donne une raison, une seule, pour garder sur notre territoire des étrangers qui collaborent avec une idéologie totalitaire qui veut la mort des Français. Les binationaux en lien avec l'idéologie islamiste doivent être déchus de leur nationalité et expulsés. Les Français qui adoptent l'idéologie de l'ennemi doivent être traduits devant les tribunaux et punis. Les lois existent, il suffit de les appliquer. Eh bien, moi, Présidente, ces lois seront appliquées sans faiblir. En quelques semaines, je vous le promets, la France aura pris toutes les dispositions nécessaires pour se mettre à l'abri des fichiers S et en totale conformité avec notre état de droit. Les mosquées radicales seront fermées, les prêcheurs de haine expulsés, les associations faunées du salafisme et des frères musulmans seront dissoutes. Avec moi, ayez la certitude que les droits des femmes aujourd'hui contestés par l'obscurantisme islamiste seront garantis à toutes les femmes de France. Avec moi, la sécurité n'ira pas à l'encontre de la liberté, en tout cas de la liberté des honnêtes gens. Je veux le dire et le répéter.
And that was the political corner with Marine Le Pen. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, the Patriotic Short.
The tweet that got the most attention was from actor Bradley Whitford, who wrote, "Hey, Cheryl Hines, way to stay silent while your lunatic husband throws his support behind the adjudicated rapist who brags about stripping women of their fundamental rights. Gutsy. Great example for the kids, profile and courage." Yeah, well, you know what I think is not gutsy? Mansplaining to a woman, but of course not to her face. How she should sacrifice her marriage. Also, you could read something on Twitter that met with your approval. You want to know why I have a bug up my ass about the left more than I used to? It's shit like this. There's an ugliness they never used to have. The liberals I grew up respecting, none of them are like this. Going after the wife, even the mafia doesn't do that.
And that was the political short. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now a little bit of motivation.
Success, guys, a very, very lonely road, man. It's an uphill battle. You're going to see your shadow most often.
It's the lonely road. You're going to feel alone all the time. You're going to wake up earlier than everybody else. You're going to go to bed later. You're going to have massive swings financially, ups and downs. Why do I tell you that? That way when these things are happening, you'll know, oh, these are signs I'm on the right road. Most everybody else will do this. The crowded road. It's well lit. There's navigational equipment. There's directions. Really good roads. The lonely road, it's dark. It's not well lit. There's a huge ups and downs. Massive turns. Roadkill along the side of other people who quit on their dreams. The lonely one, there's yield signs about once a year. Just yield. Go back to the crowded one, man. Yield. Yield. Give in. Do the thing everybody else does. Listen to the haters. All the stuff they tell you. What's so bad about where you are? It's okay. What's wrong with you? Why do you want to be rich? Money doesn't mean anything. You're changing. Any of that sound familiar? That's all the lonely road stuff. That means you're on the right road. Don't yield.
Your thoughts are the currency in which you purchase your dreams. You have to think and believe inside yourself that you have the ability to respond when adversity strikes.
Success does not require you to look out the window. It only requires that you look in the mirror. You have to start taking responsibility for your life. That doesn't mean everything in your life is your fault. Some things that have happened to you are out of your control. But responsibility means I have an ability to respond.
I got me here. I can get me out of this. And I'm getting out.
Because it doesn't matter what happens to you. All that matters is what are you going to do about it?
I don't care what happens in your life. If you're going to have energy, if you're going to have passion, if you're going to have drive, every day you wake up, you got to start with that vision. I want you to feel it. I want you to taste it. I want you to be able to feel when you're getting closer to it and closer to it. You got to have a dream party every day. You got to take out 10 minutes, 20 minutes, however much time you have, and you got to actually go in a room, close the door, and you got to see yourself doing it. You got to actually walk in it. You got to go in the future, live it out, come back in the present, and start working toward it. We just don't have sight. Sight is for people who live in the present. We have vision. We're going to make it happen before it happens. But when you're on the path to success, you're going to get hit in the face. At some point, you got to be tested by life. Suit up. And your problem is, every time you see a giant, you ready to run. I'm telling you, you got to get in your spirit. When you see that giant, let that giant know, suit up. You're not about to make me depressed. Suit up. You're not about to make me lose my mind. Suit up. You're not about to make me live in poverty. Suit up. You're not about to mess up my life. Suit up. Let's go. Suit up. Pick your head up. So what? Your life is not what you thought it was going to be. You're going to be okay. You have something great in you. You can do it. Where you are is temporary. You will not be there for the rest of your life. I can. I will. I will my way through every situation, every trial, every tribulation. I will my way through it. I don't care if it's cancer. I will my way through it. I don't care if it's MS. I will my way through it. I don't care if I'm struggling in school and I'm trying to get a degree. I will my way through it. It's going to rain sometimes. I will. You're going to feel discouraged sometimes. I will. No matter what the obstacle, I will. I must. I don't care if you fail the boards. Go again. I don't care if you fail the law exam. Go again. Will your way through it. Some things you can skill yourself through. Some stuff you got to will your way through. And I went from a GED to a PhD, not because I'm smart. I will my way through it. And people respect when you have average skill, but you have phenomenal will. They respect when you have a trial and a tribulation and you get through it. Beast mode is I will not stop when others stop. I will not quit when it gets hard. Beast mode is I will not complain. I will not worry. I will not fret. I will find a way when there is no way. I will make a door when there is no door. I will create a window when there is no window. I will create finance when there is no finance. I will find an opportunity when it doesn't exist. But I will not be defeated because I know what my desires are and I know what I deserve. So I'm telling you from personal experience, deal with it. Deal with it. And the sooner you deal with it and the sooner you overcome it, the sooner you get to your rewards.
Get right in the thick of it. Put your back into it. Put your will into it. Put your legs into it. Keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing. Don't stop until you reach your goal. Don't let anybody stop you. Go harder. Go longer. Go faster. Keep going until you reach your goal.
The question is not if life is going to get hard. The question is, are you mentally tough to get through it?
And that was a little bit of motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now a little bit of meditation. And that was a little bit of meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, what does the phrase, if you're explaining, you're losing, mean? This was said by Ronald Reagan, speaking of political campaigns. From the perspective of your audience, if you have to explain yourself, you come off looking desperate to convince. As a consequence, you lose the high ground. From a more philosophical perspective, if you have a clear conscience and strong conviction towards the positions you take, your values, truth, and direction, you don't need the opinions or consent of others. As a consequence, you don't need to explain yourself. However, if you yourself are not convinced of the validity and truth of your position, or you can't fully justify your choices, then you continue to expel words in an attempt to create the illusion of certainty. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Chapter 6 of Effective Interpersonal Communications, Method 6, Close. This one is a bit tricky. It's difficult to implement because the other person doesn't always follow your script. The theory of this method is that sometimes the best way to deal with a debate is not to argue further, but to close the debate. Basically, you use this technique when you don't want to debate further. Either you are tired of it, or you see no use in it, or you see more harm than benefit in it. What you should do is use the minimum number of words to ward off your opponent, but those words are chosen in such a way that your opponent is unable to come up with a reply and is rendered speechless. One of the situations in daily life where you need this technique often is when someone is teasing you. Just say what you want to say, and remember, be respectful always, even if the other person is rude. That way, you won't suffer from guilt later. Sometimes we feel that we have a right to be angry, but some minutes, hours, days, or months later, we forget why we were angry at the other person. Our anger has cooled down. What we do remember and what keeps bothering us is what we said to the other person. We keep feeling scared of meeting that person, even when we know what we said was entirely correct and justified in those circumstances. Certain people, when you complain to them about their behavior, give you such unjust and lame excuses that you just want to vomit. They will hurt you several times without feeling anything. However, when you hurt them once as revenge or even by mistake, they take that as an excuse and can remark, "So what if they hurt you? You also hurt them?" In other cases, people might accuse you of things you didn't do just to make you feel angry. Like you're talking to them about something simple, but they don't agree with what you're saying, so they start making arguments out of nowhere, such as, "Why are you shouting at me?" or "Why are you insulting me?" when you're doing nothing of the sort. They're just saying that to make you feel angry, so you will actually raise your voice or say something harsh, and they get an excuse to blame you for something. In such places, your overwhelming instinct would be to strike back harder, to hurt them more than they hurt you, to argue with them until you prove yourself right and force them to admit their fault. Needless to say, a reckless approach like this, which is driven by emotions rather than sense and thought, is bound to produce counterproductive effects and regrettable words and actions. Or even a slightly closer inspection, this approach appears to be filled with many faulty assumptions. First of all, every word or action of yours should have been an aim. What is your aim here in striking back harder? Would telling them something with more force, which you've already told them, make them admit their fault? Would shouting at them make them admit or realize their fault? Would hurting them make any difference to their opinion? Or would that make them think of you as even more of an enemy? Think about it for a few seconds before reading the next paragraph. The only thing you might achieve by shouting at or cursing them is that you feel better for a few seconds, minutes, or maybe days. But after that, you realize that you have lost your power to curse them. You've already taken out your anger on them, so you no longer feel angry. It's a strange feeling. You still feel hurt by what they did, but can no longer shout at them because you already have. You took your revenge, no matter how inadequate and small it was compared to what they did to you. Now you feel you are the same as them. They owe you no further debt. Now, the reality might be very different from your feelings. In reality, you might know that what they did was in no way excusable, or you might think so, at least. But a person's subconscious is 100 times stronger than a person's conscious mind. This is the reason why many people, if they kill someone, are at risk of going crazy. This is the reason why kings who've murdered their brothers for the throne, despite being surrounded by the luxuries of the world, suffer from nightmares. This is the reason why soldiers coming back from wars where they killed civilians or saw innocent people getting killed by their comrades suffer from PTSD. Hurting someone hurts you much more than if they hurt you. Being trampled 100 times is better than trampling someone once. If you understand this point, you have a much greater chance of leading a happy, peaceful life. And therefore, just as you should know when to speak and what to speak, it's equally important to learn when to stop speaking and close the conversation. Winning the external debate is dependent on winning the internal debate. If you think you have won a debate, it doesn't matter what others think. If, however, you think you have lost, then you have lost. In other words, nobody can defeat you in a debate unless you think they've defeated you. And this method had potential, but it was crap. Because basically what they're telling you to do is to internalize your anger and rage. And all that does is lead to depression and burnout. So what you want to do, though, where it is correct, is that they're talking about closing this as soon as you can. And that's absolutely correct. If you're dealing with somebody who's acting in bad faith, and what they're demonstrating here in Method 6 is how to identify somebody who's acting in bad faith. Okay, and as soon as you identify somebody who's acting in bad faith, you can use some of their techniques against them to stop them. And that's exactly what you want to do. Winning very often means simply getting them to stop talking. Okay, and once you have accomplished that, then you leave. Don't stick around and wait for them to give you a response, or wait for them to say, hey, you know what, you got a good point. They're not going to tell you won. They're not going to concede defeat. So once you get them to shut up, you say, have a nice day, I got to go, I got to get back to work. Another thing here is that the problem with this method is it doesn't give context. It is so critical whenever you're in some type of an argument, debate, that you recognize whose turf you're on. If you're on your own turf, then you can do and say anything to this person you want to. It's your house, your car, your business. If, however, you're on somebody else's turf, if you're at a workplace that doesn't belong to you, if you're coming out of church, if you're out at the soccer field, watching your kids play or something, and you're getting the business from some socialist parents, then again, you're going to want to be a little bit more, of course, diplomatic. But the same idea applies. As soon as these people start giving you the business, then you come back at them, and the best way to come back at them is with questions. That's the best way to shut them up. The first thing you want to do is find out where they're coming from. So they start giving you the business, and you say, so you're a Trump hater, so you're a socialist, so you're a Democrat, right? Get them to identify themselves. Once they've identified themselves, that's it. They're done. Because they want you to think, remember, because this is all about gaslighting, they want you to think that they are somebody that they are not. And that's the key to winning for them. You can stop that, you can stop them. Back in a minute. Thank you, Maria, then Stu.
Pyro, thank you. And John Lonsky, thank you. Everybody have a great weekend. Varney and Company picks it up. Stu, take it away.
Good morning, Maria. Good morning, everyone. Again, it is a moment-to-moment market. Any move on tariffs creates movement in stocks and bonds. Right. First thing this morning, China announced massive retaliatory tariffs on American products. They've moved to 125% against our 145%. Well, that sent stocks down. Then, just hours later, Europe's trade commissioner announced a trip to Washington this weekend. He's coming, he said, to make deals. Stock prices reverse course and moved higher. Then at 8:30 Eastern, the latest number on producer prices showed inflation continuing to soften. Prices actually declined 0.4% in the month of March. So this is where we are now on the stock market. There's plenty of green again. The Dow's up 50, Nasdaq up 10 points. Okay, not a lot of green, but at least that's the right color. The interest rates of great concern. They're moving up. The 10-year is getting close to 4.5%, 4.44 right now. The 2-year edging closer to 4%. It's down a little right now, but it's at 3.86. There is a real worry that China will sell some of that huge treasury holdings that it has. That would be financial warfare added to trade warfare. If China sold, treasury prices would fall and yields, interest rates would rise. Gold, that's moved well above $3,200 an ounce, up $70 today. It is a safe haven, $3,247. Bitcoin, not really playing that role. It's around 81,000, 82,000 this morning. It's been moving pretty much in line with stocks. On the show today, it is a full-blown trade war between China and the United States. Xi Jinping versus Donald Trump. Trump is meeting trade officials who are flocking to D.C. to make deals. Xi Jinping is about to tour Asia, shoring up support from his neighbors. At this point, neither side is backing down. Special envoy Steve Witkoff sits down with a top official from Iran tomorrow. It's the first face-to-face direct talks in years. Trump will do a deal only if Iran abandons its nuclear dreams. We are wrapping up an extraordinary week. Extreme volatility in the markets, a sudden tariff reversal. It was the Trump show all week. It's not over. It is Friday, April the 11th, 2025.
And that was Stuart Varney. Nonprofit News Now. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now another quote from Friedrich Nietzsche, perhaps one of his most famous quotes. Quote, "Battle not with monsters, lest you become a monster. And if you gaze into the abyss gazes into you." Unquote. Back in a minute. Thank you, and now Stu and his take.
Why not? I mean, a beautiful morning. Let's wake up on a Friday morning and be happy. Why not? Okay, the Dow is up after all. Good morning, everyone. 10 o'clock Eastern. To the money, please. The market's in the green, but not by much. Dow's up 43, Nasdaq up 69. Even split winners and losers among the Dow 30. The 10-year Treasury yield has been moving up, a little ominous for the market. You're right now at 4.5%. As for the price of oil, around It's $60 a barrel as we speak. And Bitcoin, that is now quoted at 82,500. Just into us. This could move the market. It's the latest read on consumer sentiment. What's the number?
You have the lowest read since February of 2022 when gas prices were spiking under Biden. 50.8 from 57 in March. So now you're down sharply for 4 months in a row. This is a fear out there that tariffs will eat into our purchasing power. We see that in the inflation expectations for April. The 1-year came in at 6.7%. The 5-year came in at 4.4%. I have to check, but that should be the highest level since the early 1990s.
There's some volatility on that. First, when the number came out, when you reported the number, the Dow actually went into the red.
Yeah.
Immediately, it turns around, and now it's up 50, and the Nasdaq's up 87.
It might be baked into the cake. This survey is done online now. You have a broader sample of people that read news online, if they're taking a survey online, and they know everything's changing by the minute.
Yeah. It's the highest
one-year inflation since 1981.
Okay. All right, folks, now we're in the red for the Dow and the S&P, Nasdaq clinging to a very small gain. Now this. This week, President Trump dominated the world stage. He stamped his influence on markets and economies everywhere. Investors have been whipsawed. Politicians are scrambling. Any statement from the White House provoked instant global reaction. Look, I've been doing this for 50 years, and I can't remember a week quite like this one. On Monday, April the 7th, the Nasdaq fell 5.8%. That was a shock. It signaled that the long and glorious big tech rally had truly wound down. Wall Street was reacting to the president's tariffs. There was a growing sense of unease. When a fake report about a suspension of the tariffs appeared, the Dow went up 1,000 points in minutes, then immediately fell back when the report turned out to be false. That's a truly skittish market. Tuesday, no relief. The Nasdaq fell another 2%. Worried investors were badgering the Treasury Secretary. Corporate leaders were badgering Trump's chief of staff. Do something. The economy is going to tank. It was a panic environment which we had not seen in years. The bombshell arrived suddenly on Wednesday, April the 9th. Out of the blue, the president dropped all reciprocal tariffs on everyone except China. That was a stunning turnaround. Had Trump caved, blinked, retreated, or was this just part of the negotiating process? The market zoomed. It was a history-making rally that took the Nasdaq up 12%. We'd never seen anything like that before. But it didn't satisfy the naysayers who opposed tariffs and truly detest Trump. There were constant warnings about recession. Interest rates were rising. China was showing no sign of buckling to pressure. It was a week that defined Trump's presidency. He is reversing America's direction. Trump does not accept massive trade deficits and job losses. That's what this week has been all about. Tax policy, Ukraine, Putin, Iran, Gaza, all relegated to the back burner. Today, China upped the ante, imposing a 125% tariff on American goods. We tariff them at 145%. This is a full-blown trade war. The United States versus China. Donald Trump versus Xi Jinping. What a week. Second hour of Varney just getting started.
And that was my take. Back in a minute. Non-profit news now. Thank you. And now, Chapter 16 of 3,000 Degrees.
16. Earlier that evening, just after she'd eaten her dinner, Joanne McNamee remembered she'd left a package in the back of the aging Volvo station wagon parked in front of the house. She went out the door off the dining room, through the garage, and out onto the driveway. The night seemed peculiar, a month out of season. The air was chilly, but not uncomfortably cold, and the breeze that blew up from the south was mild, nothing like the biting winds that typically rustled the bare branches in early December. She had noticed a familiar sound, a faint and plaintive wail, as she turned to go back into the house. She stopped to listen. 25 years had passed since she sat in an apartment at the top of a hill, hearing the sirens from the streets below, whispering to her absent husband that he'd better not die. Not now, not yet. They'd moved miles away to a leafy neighborhood west of downtown, but the wind could still sometimes catch the echo, carry the howl into her living room, or at least to her driveway. She didn't whisper to Mike anymore. She'd long ago accepted that her husband had chosen a dangerous trade, and with that knowledge came a certain anxiety, low grade but constant. Eventually, she'd become immune to it. The noise grew louder, the volume seeming to double. She couldn't tell how many trucks were involved, but by the chorus, the overlapping yowls and whoops, she guessed a second alarm had already been struck. A dozen trucks, all rolling at once. They could be headed for Maine South, but they sounded closer. Northern District, she suspected. Must be a big one, she thought. She had listened only for a moment or two before going back into the house, where she picked up the phone in the kitchen and dialed the number for Central Station. She didn't bother calling Mike's private line in his cinder block office because she assumed he'd be out. She called the watchroom instead. The fireman who answered confirmed that Mike was working a fire. "What's burning?" she asked. "Worcester Cold Storage." She'd gripped the receiver more tightly, whitening her knuckles. She remembered driving past the warehouse only 2 weeks before, when Mike had pointed at it and told her how badly it scared him. She could hear him saying it again. "God, I hope we never catch anything in there." "Shit," she said into the phone. "All right, Well, tell him to call me when he gets in. She hung up, leaned against the cream-colored tiles Mike had cemented to the countertop, let out a heavy sigh. Mike had been through worse nights. She remembered when he came home that morning in 1973, black, wet, and exhausted, stinking of ash and fire, and haunted by 10 dead civilians. She'd wanted to stay with him, hold him, tell him how she was frightened and relieved and grateful all at once, give in to all the emotions that could torture a fireman's wife. Mike had fallen asleep, and she'd gone to work, and she'd put it out of her mind. He came home, and that's all that mattered. Her mother's advice came back to her. You don't borrow worry. Tonight was no time to start. There were dishes in the sink. Joanne decided they needed to be washed, right then, immediately. She turned on the kitchen faucet, rinsed the plates, stacked them in the dishwasher, wiped the good knives with a soapy sponge, and set them on a rack to dry. Then she sat on the couch in the family room and turned on the television, which was next to the window. Through the lace curtains, she could see the lamplight across the street in the window of the house where Jay Lyons had grown up, where his parents still lived. She knew Jay was working tonight. It was fascinating to think of him as a fireman, as a man, to realize how many years had gone by. In one frame of her memory, Jay was a lanky schoolboy delivering her newspaper. In the next, he was a rowdy teenager drinking with his buddies in the parking lot of the synagogue behind her house. She could hear the empty beer cans tinkling on the blacktop through the screen of evergreens that separated her yard from the lot. Then he was a handsome high school senior who she trusted to babysit her daughters, who brought them stuffed animals on their birthdays. If one of my girls ever brings home a boy half as nice as Jay, she told Mike once, I'll be a happy woman. At 8 o'clock, she switched to NBC. She'd gotten hooked on Providence. As the opening credits rolled, a bold line of type scrawled across the top of the screen. A few words and phrases leaped out at her, seemed to be backlit, radiant. 5-alarm blaze. Her stomach knotted. Worcester Cold Storage Warehouse. Her mouth went dry. 2 firefighters missing. She dropped the remote, grabbed her keys off the counter, ran out the front door, not bothering to close it behind her. She jammed the key into the Volvo's ignition, dropped it into reverse, stomped the gas, hit the pavement, then sped up Saxon Road. Mike's one of them, she thought. Mike would be in the building. Mike would be the first one in the building and the last one in the building. Mike's missing. Then the worst thought, one she'd never allowed herself to imagine. Mike might be dead. The green foil crinkled when she wrapped it around the plastic pots, puckered into tiny metallic ridges that Kathy Spencer smoothed with her hands. She pressed firmly but gently, carefully avoiding the red leaves of the poinsettias that draped over the edge of the pots. She pressed gold foil around the next one, then red on the third, alternating iridescent holiday colors. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was relaxing. Kathy looked forward to every shift at the nursery, especially after Thanksgiving. She was good with plants, and the amaryllis bulbs and evergreen wreaths and holly garlands stirred her Christmas spirit, made the holiday seem literally alive. She worked until 8 o'clock, then drove home to pack for the trip to New York City in the morning. A pang in her stomach reminded her she hadn't eaten anything since the turkey sandwich Tom made for lunch. She stopped at a sandwich shop, ordered an eggplant parmesan grinder to go, then drove the rest of the way home. She gave the horn a short toot as she passed the house 2 doors from her own where Tom's parents lived, which was next to the one where his brother Mike lived. He was a Worcester fireman, too. Tom liked living close to his family, the whole clan clustered together. His father had bought a small fishing boat a few months earlier, and when the weather warmed up, 3 generations of Spencer men, father and sons and grandsons, would drift across a pond hunting bluegill and bass. It was almost 8:30 when she put her sandwich down on the kitchen counter. She picked up the phone and dialed the number for the Grove Street station. It was a habit, checking in with Tom at the station when she came home. And she had to call tonight, his last night running letter, too. A staccato buzz vibrated the earpiece. Busy. She hung up, unwrapped her dinner. The phone rang. Hello? Kathy? One of her friends. Yeah? Did you know there's a big fire downtown? No. Kathy hadn't watched television, which had been broadcasting live shots from Worcester Cold Storage for more than an hour. Well, her friend said, It's a really bad one. Okay. An awkward pause. Thanks for calling. Kathy had gotten calls like that before, and she'd never been rattled by any of them. She didn't worry about Tom or any other man on the job because experience had taught her that firemen always came home in the morning. Her father had been a Worcester fireman, and her uncle too, and they always came home. The hardest part for her father had been giving up the job. The city forced him to retire the day he turned 65, which was December 26th, 1984. He could have taken off Christmas Day, but he wanted to work one more shift. He was a big part of the reason Tom became a fireman. By his second year at UMass Lowell, Tom knew he didn't want to continue with college. Kathy's father told him about fighting fires, a good job with good benefits and decent pay, enough to support his daughter and his grandchildren. Tom took the test, scored well, dropped out of school, and joined the department in 1978. He'd gotten banged up in the past 21 years, but nothing serious, except for the night he got lazy, and instead of moving a ladder over a couple of feet, he leaned way out to the side, slipped, and tore up his knee. Fact is, he'd done more damage playing baseball, fast-pitch hardball in an over-30 league. None of that sissy softball, he'd tell Kathy. 2 knee operations and a broken thumb later, she finally convinced him that his baseball injuries were keeping him off the fire trucks. Kathy scouted for her kids. Patrick, the oldest, was watching a video with his girlfriend in the basement rec room, where Tom kept his baseball encyclopedias and his Civil War books, and on a bench in the back, the wooden model of a schooner he was building, thin strips of veneer for the decking already soaked and pliable. Daniel, the youngest, was at a party. Kathy made a phone call, made sure he had a ride home. Casey, their daughter, joined her in the kitchen, where they talked about their trip in the morning while Kathy ate. Kathy's friend Cheryl, who was going with them, called to finalize their plans. She looked at her watch. 10 o'clock. The early news was on, with a weather preview near the top of the hour. Kathy switched on the television in the living room. The first bright image startled her. The screen was a swirl of black and orange, broken by the red and white flashes of the lights from the fire trucks. Flames twisted from the roof of a dark, hulking square. She would have known it was Worcester Cold Storage, would have recognized the shape and the highway running next to it, even if the logo painted near the roof had been burned away. Her eyes widened. Wow, that is a big one, she muttered. She felt Casey next to her. What is it, Mom? There was worry in her voice. Just a big fire, Kathy said. But look. She pointed at the bottom of the screen, where ladder 2 was clearly visible. There's Daddy's truck. We're all set. She glanced at her daughter, whose brow was creased. Kathy snapped off the television. Come on, she said brightly. Let's go pack. After the pizza dinner, Denise Brotherton ferried her oldest son to his basketball game and brought her next oldest so he could watch. Denise usually found a seat in the bleachers too, but she couldn't stay tonight. She had to go home and cook platters of food for Kim's baby shower on Sunday. Kim was technically her sister-in-law, but they were much closer than that would imply. That was curious too, considering that Denise had been her surrogate mother, helping Paul raise her after Paul's parents had died. When she was younger, Kim's friends used to tell her how lucky she was, growing up with her brother in charge. They didn't know the half of it. Paul and Denise were still young enough to know about the kegs of beer kids lugged into the woods at Burncoat Park, young enough to remember what went on all night after the senior prom. Which is why Kim had to be home at 11 o'clock every night, even during her senior year in high school, and why Paul grounded her for 5 weeks when she stumbled in past dawn after prom. She had lived with him until 1998, when she married her husband, Chris. Paul walked her down the aisle. A year later, he was the second person, after her husband, who Kim told she was pregnant. It was hard to tell who was more excited. I'm going to redo a crib for the kid, Paul told her, which he did. 8 months later, he still had to stick fresh wallpaper on the nursery walls, but he'd already decided he would call the boy Nat, short for Nathan Paul. Kim drew the line at letting Paul coach her through labor. There is no friggin' way you're coming into the delivery room with me, she said. Denise got home at 8:20 and went straight to the kitchen to start cooking. The phone rang. It was one of Paul's cousins calling. There's a big fire downtown, he said. Really? Where? The cold storage building. Denise thought for a second, scanned her memory of downtown, found Worcester Cold Storage. Ugh, she said. That's not good. Yeah, I know. I heard there were 2 men down. Oh, God, that's terrible. She gathered some bowls. Look, I gotta go. I'll talk to you later. It didn't occur to her that Paul would be missing. He was too careful, a stickler for safety. You have to respect fire, he'd lecture his sons. It'll destroy you in nothing flat if you don't respect it. When the medical runs increased, and with them the number of bleeders and pukers firemen had to deal with, Paul got himself inoculated against hepatitis B. She remembered him explaining why he was against doubling the size of their air tanks to a 60-minute capacity. No one should be inside a burning building for an hour, he told her. That's way too long. You gotta get out of the heat, get rehydrated, rest. She knew Paul wouldn't be inside long enough to get lost, that he'd find his way out, bring his partner with him. She hesitated, thought twice. Maybe she should call the station, just check in. She dialed the watchroom at Central Station. It's Denise Brotherton, she said. Is Paul in? Nope. The voice was deadpan. He's out on a run. Okay, just tell him I called. She pressed the switch hook once, then dialed the number for the police department. Hi, my name's Denise Brotherton. The line went dead. She found that odd, but assumed she'd been accidentally disconnected. With a fire raging downtown, the police switchboard must have been overloaded with calls. She put the phone back on the hook. It rang a moment later, Paul's cousin calling again. Denise, they're saying there's 4 guys missing. A twitch in her stomach. Paul was careful, but he was also on the front lines. He would have been one of the first men in. And if he'd gone in looking for someone else, maybe he wouldn't have been as careful, would have taken an extra chance, pushed harder. Denise, you want to go down to the scene? No, she said immediately. Paul always told me if anything happened to him, the fire department would come to me. And no news is good news. The broom whisked across the linoleum, sweeping soft clumps of freshly snipped hair into a neat pile. The phone in the salon rang. Michelle Lucy leaned the broom against the chair where she'd been cutting her client's hair, reached for the receiver. It was Ralph, her brother. Michelle, there's a really big fire downtown, he said. Really? She looked at the clock. A few minutes before 9. Okay. Is Jerry working? Yeah, he swapped on. It's a really big one. Okay, she said. I believe you. The conversation was short and inconsequential. Ralph often called when a particularly spectacular blaze ignited somewhere in the city, wanting to know if Jerry was working, if he was all right. He always was. In fact, Michelle worried more about his damned motorcycle than she did about him being a fireman. It was a retired police bike, a big white machine, and he rode it all year, even in the winter. Go home and make some calls. The ice in her veins melted, began to boil, made her arms and her legs and her face tingle. Tears, salty and stinging, welled in her eyes. Her vision blurred. She dropped the broom, got into her car, turned the key. The engine turned over, caught. She started to weep. Their first date had been in a car, sharing a 6-pack in a Pontiac when she was a cashier at the Big Y, and Jerry stocked shelves. They'd been together ever since. She'd never known a life without Jerry. How am I going to live without you? She whimpered. Oh, God. How am I going to live without you? She blinked, forcing the tears out, clearing her sight. Why hadn't he listened to her mother? Jerry, she'd tell him, now when you go to a big fire, do one thing. Stay back. It was only a joke. But why didn't he listen? She burst in the front door. The babysitter was on the phone talking to Michelle's mother. Michelle told her she didn't know anything, that she had to use the phone. She called Ralph, then her sister Elaine, and her sister-in-law Noreen. They all said they were on their way. Then she tried to call the fire department. There was no dial tone. She tried another extension. It was dead, too. She tried different jacks. They were all silent. Her phone line had suddenly gone out, and for no apparent reason. She was frantic, unable to reach anyone. She found Jerry's scanner, plugged it in, tried to glean snippets of information from the radio chatter, but there was too much background noise. Nothing came in clearly. Shortly after 10 o'clock, Kathy Spencer's phone rang again. Her in-laws were calling from 2 doors up.
Kathy?
Tom's father told her.
The fire department wants us to go down to St. Stephen's.
Why? Kathy was annoyed. St. Stephen's was all the way downtown.
I don't know. Maybe they want us to make sandwiches.
Make sandwiches? Kathy was more annoyed, almost perturbed. 12 hours of work and she had to drag herself out to fold bologna onto white bread? She took a deep breath. A bad fire, the guys would be hungry. Tom's last night, the brotherhood and all. All right, she said. I'll come up. She pulled on a coat, walked out the door and up the street. Her sister-in-law met her on the sidewalk. She looked worried. Should I bring the kids? Kathy asked. No, leave them. They'll be fine. Tom's parents were getting into the car. Their faces were grim. Kathy slipped into the back seat with her sister-in-law. They rode in silence for a few blocks. So, Kathy finally said, is there something you're not telling me? A short silence, then all three in unison. No. The drive to St. Stephen's took almost 15 minutes. Kathy stewed most of the way, still aggravated she was being taken away from her kids to make sandwiches. Her father-in-law parked, and Kathy followed him into the building. There were a couple dozen people inside, firemen or their relatives. She didn't recognize all of them, or even most of them. She saw a familiar face through the crowd. Dave McGrath, a fireman and a friend of Tom's. He walked toward her, but with an odd gait, a mild lurch, as if his legs had atrophied. He held both his hands out, took Kathy's and his. Kathy, he said, I'm so sorry. She knew Tom was dead. She stared blankly, stoic. About what? Dave's eyes opened wider, surprised. Tom's missing. Didn't you know? Mike McNamee's on his way to your house. Kathy stopped breathing, had to focus, make her lungs inhale. She had one thought. I left my kids at home alone, she said. You've got to get me home. You've got to get me home right now. A twitch in her stomach. Eggplant parmesan. Her face went white. Dave, I'm going to throw up. Dave stepped to one side, gently nudged her in the direction of the bathroom. Kathy ran past him, through the door, into a stall. Her stomach emptied in 3 heaves. Then she laid down on the floor, turned her head, let her cheek rest against the concrete. Ammonia burned her nose, the smell of cleaning fluid masking urine. I've got to get home, she thought. I've got to get to my kids. The floor felt cool against her face. She didn't want to move. Outside, Tom was dead, and her children were alone, and 100 grieving men were waiting to tell her how sorry they were. Her face would be hot, flushed. The floor felt so cool. She could lay there a little longer.
And that was chapter 16 of 3,000 Degrees, the true story of a deadly fire and the men who fought it, by Sean Flynn. Back in a minute. Thank you, and this is Ron, your host, the only true conservative. In the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that materialism is a concept. Thank you, and this is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that materialism is a concept.